Last week, I participated in the drawing marathon at the Royal Drawing School, and it was 5 days of art making. It was amazing, and today I'm going to be sharing with you the 5 lessons that I learned during these 5 days, which I thought might be helpful for you too. On top of that, I have to organize all the artwork that I've made, so you can enjoy me doing that process as well. So the artwork is going to appear here in 3, 2, there we go. Okay. Let's get organizing. So before I actually get into the lessons, I should probably explain what I've been doing for the last 5 days. So on Monday and Friday we did life drawing, and then the other 3 days we could choose from the electives that were given. On Tuesday I did etching, and this is essentially where you take a metal plate and through a series of chemical processes you are able to engrave it, and you make a drawing which you can then ink and put through a roller bed, which then creates multiple copies of this drawing. And that was really fun. It was a very intensive process, but it was something I enjoyed. On Wednesday, I did drawing at the British Museum, and this is essentially what it sounds like. We all went to the British Museum as a group, and we drew some of the Greek things that were in the British Museum. This was really fun and something that I have been meaning to try, but obviously it's a very intimidating thing to do, and of course there were tons of tourists around. It really challenged me actually, and I really would like to do it again, despite the fear of people looking over your shoulder every 2 seconds. You know, someone even had the audacity to ask me to do the drawing for their video. Anyways, Thursday was drawing narratives, and this was basically where we took a life drawing or a life model, and we also added a layer to it by discussing this, I think it's a Greek mythology of Narcissus, and we kind of added a layer of imagination to the life drawing or the life model in front of us. And that was also really cool as well, because you were basically blending, you know, reality with imagination, which is something that I really want to explore more. Okay, let's jump right into the lessons. So I have all my notes in this cute little book here. I love how everything matches. Don't you love how everything matches? So lesson number 1 is to practice loosening up. Now this is something that I think people teach in art school really well, and it's also something that we as beginner artists or even as experienced artists find really difficult to do, which is to actually not just draw what's from life, but actually try something that looks more abstract, less realistic. And there were some really great exercises that the teachers taught us, or rather told us to do, and I just wanted to share some of those with you. Drawing with 2 hands, drawing with your non-dominant hand, doing a continuous line drawing, doing a line drawing with lots of short marks, not looking at your page, and doing a drawing with soft lines and also with hard lines. And when you try those exercises, I feel like it really does kind of loosen you up, and it allows you to see what kind of marks you can make with the material that you have, in order to use those marks within your overall drawing. And it just gives you something to focus on that's not the subject itself, and that is really important, I think, because we're so fixated on making sure that what we see in front of us is so accurate, and then we just forget that there's this tool that we have, we forget that there's the mood that we're trying to capture. And doing these exercises gives us a vocabulary which allows us to express more than just realism. This brings me on to lesson number 2, which is the difference between studies and art. So in our first life drawing session, which was on the Monday, the tutor got us to do studies in the first half of the day, and then he got us to do the series of exercises which I told you about in the first lesson in the second half of the day. And then when we laid all our drawings out and we were comparing them at the end of the day, he made a point to note that all of the drawings in the second half were so much more expressive, more abstract, and more artistic than the first drawings, because they had energy, they had charisma, they had personality, because we weren't all just trying to copy the life model in front of us, we were doing our own version of what it was, and everyone had such different vibes and different energies within the drawing. Some people used graphite, some people used pastels, watercolors, markers. You know, the type of material was endless, but also because the person doing it is different, the way they draw, their understanding of the drawing, you know, the way they put their body into the drawing even, it's different, and that is what makes art. And he made a very good point by saying that abstract art is actually on a more intellectual level than non-abstract art, because you're not just depicting what you see, but you're taking it a step further and you're adding emotion and you're adding, personality into that drawing. And that is actually a very difficult thing to do, because most of us are just so obsessed with copying. And I'm definitely guilty of that myself as someone who does urban sketching. And whilst urban sketching is amazing and there are benefits to it, I always think, how can I add more to this drawing? How can I add more life to this drawing? And the way to do that is to be more expressive. And you can be more expressive by following some of the exercises in the previous lesson, sorry. So studies are a great starting point, and they are a good springboard to push off of in order to make art that expresses more. So, for example, in our drawing narratives class, we followed the Greek mythology story, I think it's Greek, of Narcissus, and that's where narcissism comes from. He was a very egotistical guy who fell in love with himself, and the life model that we had, she was posing in different ways of how the main character Narcissus would do in the story, and we would use her as the base, and then we were told to imagine the surroundings, imagine the landscape around the figure, and to basically create the story through what was in front of us. And that was quite an interesting thing to do, because it allows us to kind of do more than what is just in front of us, and it allows us to really welcome to London, where we live like a tin of sardines right next to each other. I can't tell if she's laughing or crying. It's really annoying. Okay, so the third lesson that I learned was to spend more time than I want on a piece. So obviously when you're in school, you are there for a fixed number of hours and you're told to do something for a fixed number of hours. And it was really difficult for me actually to sit there and do a drawing or do multiple drawings for 2.5 hours straight. I mean, of course we could take breaks in between, but if it was me at home doing a drawing, I would try and finish it as fast as possible, and just that was it. I would be done. Even though I found it really difficult to sit there and draw when I didn't want to, I also realized that that was just something that I needed to tell my brain to do in order to kind of push myself further. And of course, when you're in a group and drawing, you see others around you and they motivate you. And that was something really important that I learned, is that if I sit there for 50 minutes and do a drawing, yes, it's hard, but I'm also able to really push myself in a way that I didn't know how. And that was quite a new discovery for me. I feel like it allows me to understand the process better, as opposed to just getting to the final result, which I've talked about a lot on this channel, but I think Instagram and social media has really conditioned us to focus on the end result, which is definitely not what life is about in general, especially not your art. So yeah, I think that having an extended period of time for your artwork, or to do the artwork, and forcing yourself to do that, or at least pushing yourself is probably a better word, it is very beneficial, and I'm going to definitely try and do that, even if I get really tired. And if you do get tired during a long period of time and you're drawing, one thing I would suggest doing, which I did, was just do a lot of little drawings, little studies, really quick ones that will just get you kind of motivated again, as opposed to just doing one big drawing. That's something that I found really worked for me when I had to do like a long life drawing pose, like 40 minutes or something. So yeah, that's a good tip. The fourth lesson is to let go of expectations, and I think this is a very obvious one, but also a very important one. It's something that we tend to really compare ourselves, especially when we're in art school and we see everyone's work around us, and it's just something we naturally do. But I think turning that expectation rather from comparison to I don't know what the word is, but using it to learn, basically. One of the things that one of the tutors said was to make big mistakes, because you're going to learn from those mistakes. And I think art is a good place to make those mistakes, even if you are using expensive materials, because you know what? Materials used are better than materials not used, no matter how expensive they are. And that's something that I have to say to myself first and foremost, and something that I really did learn in the art school, because you can't make a perfectly anatomical drawing each time. But even if you are struggling with a drawing or with a piece, try and find what it is that you are looking to work on. Try and find what it is that interests you about what you're doing. Try and find just one thing, right? Like, even when I was sat there, and this kind of relates back to the previous point, but even when I was sat there and I was so bored, right? Like I was drawing, for example, these Greek pots on the third day, and I was really bored because they all looked the same. And I was just thinking, okay, what's different about them? But I had, what, half an hour still remaining, and I had to fill that time with drawing. And so I just kind of wandered around a bit, kind of refreshed my brain, and I just looked at each of the pots, and I tried to look at one which was maybe differently shaped or had a different story on the outside of it. And I would focus on maybe the figure, I would focus on the design, I'd focus on the colours, or I'd focus on just having fun and using the materials that I had to just experiment and explore and play. And the colours may not have been accurate, or the size may not, the proportions, whatever. But if I learned something, if I'd learned just one thing from this drawing, then that drawing is a success. And then the final point that I have is that community is super important when it comes to art. I met so many incredible people during this week, and most of them are surprisingly not from London, and not even from the UK, actually. All of them said something very similar, which is we don't have the same type of arts community in our country. And wherever you are, try and find your people, try and find your community, because there was so much benefit in the discussion and the bouncing off of ideas from each other, and just learning from each other's experiences, and being surrounded by people, and just seeing what they're doing and understanding their backgrounds and understanding their artworks as well. It can really inspire you, and it can also really inspire them when they see your artwork. So yeah, just try and find your community if you can, in person, because that is definitely the most beneficial thing. And don't be scared, don't be worried or intimidated, because I have found that most art communities are just so kind and open and embracing, because we all come from backgrounds which can be judgmental and hostile, and art is a safe space. It's supposed to be a safe space for everyone, so don't be scared and take this as your chance or opportunity to go out and find some sort of art event or art community near you, because you honestly never know what you'll discover and what you'll find, or who, rather. So those are my 5 lessons. I hope you enjoyed that, and I hope you enjoyed seeing some of the artworks. And if you are thinking of doing the Royal Drawing School courses or the drawing marathon or whatever, I would recommend the courses and the teachers and the community. I think it's great. It's really, really inspiring and encouraging. And they have a lot of online courses as well, so you can check those out too if you're not based in the UK, or in London even. And with that, I will see you in my next video. Peace out. Bye.